We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Hit the record button.
Gosh, that's swell.
Hello, everybody. This is Italo speaking. This is Italo's Black Tie Radio, and we're back. We're back because we haven't finished talking about all the different topics. The Dark Triad. We had last week. We were talking about psychopathy. And by the way, sorry to say, I haven't introduced my guest, which is here already, Joshua, or the artist formerly known as JW. Welcome.
Hello.
So let's dive right into it, because this show talks about a topic that I think I'm pretty familiar with, which is narcissism, which is part of the. Is it part of the Dark Triad or
Number 2?
Okay, so I got that right.
Yeah.
And so for those that are listening and haven't heard of the last episodes, actually the last 2 episodes that I had, I think it's number 76. That was the first one that we had, which is we talked about narcissistic mother abuse, or surviving mother. I don't know what the title is, but it talks about narcissistic mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went last week and we talked about psychopathy, which is part of the Dark Triad. And today we came full circle back to narcissism. But before we dive into it, I do want to disclose, like I did last week, and that's the first time I ever did it, that if you are suffering from narcissistic abuse, or if you feel like you're being manipulated, gaslighted, and all that stuff, all that good stuff or bad stuff, speak to a professional, because we are not professionals. Although Joshua is very knowledgeable about the topic, and I'm learning still. But if you need assistance, or if you need to talk to somebody, a professional is the most appropriate person to talk to about this. And also there's hotlines. I'm going to put at the end all the hotlines if you feel overwhelmed or if you feel triggered by this episode, and I hope you don't, but you probably will. If you feel like, sometimes when you hear a topic, it triggers a memory, and it triggers something that you knew you felt it. And so that happened to me. So I'm just saying, if you do feel like that's trigger something in your memory bank, please reach out, because it's always important to do that. Anyways, that's my disclosure.
Well, like I said, we're coming full circle to what we discussed in my first episode, Narcissistic Moms, where you can see I also wore my Jedi t-shirt in response to my Star Wars tank top I wore the last episode. I just want to put that out there. To bring a sort of sequel, because narcissism is a sequel to psychopathy. And I also want to say that another term for narcissism is crazy maker. And I've had a lot of crazy makers, including myself, in my life. Let me start off by saying crazy is crazy. Now, it's looked at as not being a sensitive word anymore. A very chaotic situation, which is where I'm from. A lot of chaotic things. And I think a lot of the time when we decide to go sane, so to speak, it feels like we're going crazy. And to the narcissist, we're going crazy because we're not feeding into whatever it is that they gave us for us to feed from. And I think that narcissism is a lot more popular these days, growing, I'd say. I tried to make some cliff notes just now, spark notes of this, I'd say this monster truck type off-road B-movie type life I've had since the 90s. I'd say since about 1999, I started to take over the wheel, so to speak, of my own path. 20 years later, 2019, I decided that enough was enough. I came out west. I'm from the Midwest. I'm not sure if I made that clear the first time. I'm from the Midwest. I've always been trying to get out to the West Coast. And I don't know if that's because I felt a narcissistic pull from Hollywood or from one narcissistic situation to the next. And if anybody didn't know, LA is the narcissist capital of the United States, of the
Where I'm
world.
at, guys.
And that's where I wanted to be. But speaking of Los Angeles, a little bit of history on me. In 2020, in the year 2020, the year that we all changed based on the pandemic and whatnot, and the virus, as the world stopped, I started to look within myself, and not on purpose. I just got to a place where I was hyper focused on myself, literally. Okay, narcissism, right? So I started, not exactly, but I started focusing on myself by myself, and I just really started to think about a lot of things I've done, and it just up until this point, the pandemic got me thinking about my life before and where I am now. Well, I was watching an episode of Red Table Talk with the Jada Smith family, with her mother and her daughter.
Right.
And they brought on a doctor named Dr. Ramani Deversala, also known as Dr. Ramani, as I like to call her Dr. R. She began talking about narcissism. And then as I dug deeper into her life, I realized that she actually is a professor in Los Angeles, and she teaches narcissism, narcissistic abuse, and NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. And the more I listened to her talk about these types of individuals, the more I started thinking about me and where I come from. I just started to realize that it got me thinking about my birth family and the way I was raised. It reminded me of as a kid, I studied abnormal psychology. I'm a nerd. Full disclosure, I'm a nerd. I used to study all of my aunt's psychology books when I was 8 or 9 years old, when she was in college back in the 70s. And Dr. Romney helped take me back to that place I was as a kid, back to my childhood, back to the trauma, so to speak, back to all of that. I started to think about that. I started to reread those things. And I literally started to see different people from my past around me during my upbringing. I was surrounded by a bunch of narcissists, a bunch of people who did not care about my well-being. And I say that because Dr. Ramani always talks about, when a person says, I gave you food, I gave you water, I gave you a roof, I gave you clothing, that's great and all, but that's no better than an orphanage.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bare minimum. Because to raise a human being from a child to an adult, you must have a mental capacity, you must have emotions. I was devoided. I was raised with a group of people who said they did not care how I felt. And I had a mom who told me that she loved me, but she didn't like me. And that's a phrase that sticks with me to this day. What does that mean?
Right.
What exactly is that? And coming from a place where there was no place safely, there was no safety in me sharing my emotions or speaking my mind without all of the, how do I put it, without all of the backlash that is associated with narcissism. And, narcissism is a disorder of self-esteem where that person has trouble regulating how they feel to the person outside of them. And I remember, now that I know this, looking back, I was in a very highly problematic, unsafe environment. Not sure how I made it, but I did. And so as survivors, I think it's important that we learn about where we come from. And Dr. Ramani in 2020 definitely reminded me of where I came from and how far I've come by listening to her talk to me about all of these clinical terms and how to learn about narcissism.
Right. Yeah, and I follow Ramani too. She's on my top list, along with Dr. Judy, and I have different doctors that I'm listening to. But yeah, in particular, Ramani, she hones in on the topic, and I like that she's always coming up with new terms or the proverbs, and I love her channel. So if you guys haven't followed her, please make sure you do. And I learn a lot from her. And but like you were saying earlier about your mom. See, I have the opposite mother that you did, whereas my mom would be the one that's always saying I love you and don't you love me, and she's always needy. It's a different energy. So she was giving me a different energy, as opposed to flat out telling me I don't like you, or I love you but I don't like you. That doesn't make any sense. But it was yeah, it's difficult to explain, because the way that she will present herself, it will be like very loving, but at the same time doing things that are not very lovingly. So it's crazy making right there.
Yeah, and to add on to what you said, you are correct about that. I came from women who were raised by their fathers. Their dads taught them the hardness of I don't care. At the same time, these women were deeply empathetic, I think, and so they cared a lot. So whatever these dads did to them suppressed it within them. So I think that they had this borderline attitude of, if you do what I say, you do what I do, then I love you so much and I'll share all these emotions with you and I love you, I love you, I love you. But if you don't, then I'll become the dad that you don't have, and then I'll tell you how much I don't like you in order to build you up into this toxic masculine man that my dad was, so I can relate to you.
Yeah. And isn't that something where the parents or the fathers are pushed aside? I've noticed that as well with it's particularly narcissistic mothers or guardians, or women that raised you or raised us. They somehow make it a point to push them aside. Like, I was talking to my dad yesterday, and he shared a story that when they were getting a divorce, my mom was she was very adamant about getting a divorce, and she couldn't tell the judge why he wasn't abusive to her. He wasn't a bad person. He had addictions, and then the funny thing is that how at the end of the judgment, they granted their divorce, but at the end she tried to buy him off. She had this stack of money that she wanted to give him in order for him to stay away from my life. That seemed it's very significant to me, how you're buying people off to stay off my life. That is, if that's not evil, I don't know what is. I don't know. That's something that I don't know. I just thought about it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My dad, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned last time, he was murdered. Actually, I'm in the middle. I didn't explain all that the last time. I'm actually in the middle of a cold case situation where I'm thinking about reopening his case to solve what happened with him now that I've dealt with my mom. Come to speak of that, when he left this earth, apparently he left money. I don't know, some amount of money. There's a big family debacle over that. I'm talking like Romeo and Juliet, Capulet versus Montague type style. We don't like each other, but we have to deal with this kid that was created between the two of you. Well, I think similar to your story, I was given an amount of money per month till I was 18 years old. And there's one thing she used to say to me. I remember the check saying for my mom's name to my mom's name for Joshua Wills. And I always remember saying, being a kid and wanting lots of Christmas gifts and birthday presents, all that's mine. Now, I'm not sure about any other family, but in a Black family particularly, a lot of Black people don't talk about how to use money correctly, how to save money correctly, how to deal with finances, period. I wasn't taught finances until I was like 18 or 19 years old. Effectively, that is. So here I am saying, that's my money. And she's like, no, this is my money for you. And I'm thinking, now as an adult, that's a very distorted thing to say to a child, that his dad left him money for his life, for his future, but mom comes in and takes it and says, it's my money for you. What does that mean in teaching me what it means to have X amount of money from my dad? So that's something that followed me. It didn't really stick with me until I got older, learning about finances and how I might have had a college tuition if my mom cared about my future. She cared about herself at that moment with what she was doing with my dad's money for me.
Yeah.
So
that's financial abuse too, because people talk about abuse as physical or as emotional, but there's also financial abuse.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because I think as sons of narcissistic moms, we weren't really individuals. We were accessories to them. In other words, another expense, I believe.
Right. And so let's I guess we should talk about narcissism in general, right? Like what is the difference between psychopathy and narcissism? Because we talked about it last week and now we are in the other spectrum, because the way you explained it to me, and it made a lot of sense, is that it's like in a spectrum, or in a here's the line, here the line here is psychopathy, and then it goes all the way to the other side, which is narcissism, right? There's I guess a spectrum, and it can go different ways. How do you tell the difference?
I think a good way to tell the difference is to think of them as fraternal twins, in a sense. They were born at the same time, but they look different, so to speak. And like I said earlier, like narcissism is a disorder of self-esteem, and they have trouble regulating their self-esteem. So I would say that there's definitely some guilt and shame going on with a narcissist. They actually feel it. A psychopath doesn't feel it. They don't care. Remember, I said I think they don't care about 45 times last time. In this episode, I'm going to say that narcissists very much care about what they're doing. They just don't know how to regulate it, and they don't know what that means to you. Okay? There's so much more shame, because I think that and remember, this is my study. This is what I've learned. I'm no doctor here. Shame is a public emotion. You can see shame if you have it. They don't want you to see their shame. And they really don't want to see your shame either, because everything is great and wonderful and fantastic and da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Because society says everything is great and fantastic and da-da-da-da-da-da. They're trying to mimic society. So with that being said, I think that they don't want to be viewed negatively in the public eye, basically, because that activates the shame rage cycle. Because if you have yourself a narcissist that doesn't want to deal with shame, then you have a narcissist who is rageful. And rage is like, if you ask me, if shame was an egg, then rage would be a dozen of eggs, all lined up and not dealt with. You get anger, and that's that. Narcissism is an extreme self-involvement to the degree that it makes a person ignore the needs of everything and everyone and everybody around them.
Right. Yeah. And there's a thing about shame too, because I also learn how they place their shame on us or the sons or daughters, where they're supposed I felt I need to defend her against the world, right? There was this thing where I had to be secretive. I couldn't share anything. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like it was us, me and my mother, versus everybody else, including my father. And it became, it was hell. It was hell because everybody was trying to, and unfortunately, I thought they were trying to help me, but when you're part of this, or you're part of this system, you're one with. That's the part that is so sick, where you become one with that person, and so their feelings become your feelings, their shame becomes yours, and how do you break that? And then growing up as an 8-year-old or 10-year-old, how would you know the difference between your own stuff and their stuff? It's
Codependent. There's a codependent thing going on there with our moms. Like, mom is life, right? She pushed us out. We have her mitochondria and DNA, which is only found from the mom. She's very special, just like a narcissist is. She's very special to the upbringing of a human. Now, when your mom doesn't allow you to be an individual like us, like what we came up with, it was difficult for me to deal with myself when myself was naturally becoming individual at puberty. Things started showing up, feelings started showing up, thoughts started showing up, and other kids were growing up. And here I am, still attached to mom.
right.
That was quite the situation in my life, where not only did I have to become an individual, but I also had to stop being a child because mom wanted my childhood to continue. Yet at the same time, because I got to be your dad too, because you don't have any men in your life, you got to grow up. Stop being a child by next week.
So which is it? Which is it? I'm confused.
See, that's the thing. That's exactly the thing right there. There's a sort of like dichotomy that comes with, I think, when you're raised specifically in a matriarchal family system of narcissism. There's a dichotomy there. I could be your mom and your dad. And I don't want the ladies out here to look at me and say I'm bashing single moms. I want them to know that there are challenges that come with women raising boys. How will they become men? That's the question. They're probably thinking, well, how did I become a man? Well, I nearly destroyed myself.
Mm-hmm.
The self that I didn't know I had because of the cognitive dissonance that came with from dependent lifestyle to independence, and then hating myself that every teenager does at the very beginning. I decided to hate myself later on in life when I should have been an upstanding citizen in society. And that's what we have right now with narcissism.
Yeah.
The question is, are narcissists born or are they created? And I sort of covered that in the last episode. Psychopaths are born and sociopaths, which is a whole different story we're not going to get into, but they're made. My theory is that scientists are still doing studies on the genetics if narcissists are born, but they are made. And they're made from the situations you and I grew up with. Codependence.
Yeah.
A very selfish person telling us to do things in their favor, ignoring our individuality.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with being unable to deal with their emotions, because they're very emotionally, they're still arrested development. They're still trapped in their childhood and their ways, and they are not willing, because they're capable of changing, but they're not willing to, or they don't see anything wrong with what they're doing, and they continue doing it. And yeah, it's just a vicious cycle.
Well, they're not regulating their emotions. Dr. Ramani would say that they're incapable of doing it. And if, for instance, I've been called narcissistic before, okay, and we all do have an ego. We all have narcissistic tendencies, okay?
Right.
There is a thing called self-care, and self-care is not selfish. So when there's enough, and psychiatrists call it healthy narcissism, which I think is a little confusing for our topic. Mm-hmm. But I will say that, sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but self-care is not selfish. And when you regulate your emotions, you know that empathy, reciprocity, and compassion are a part of the human experience, where we share who we are with each other, not put who we are on someone else and then demand that same thing back the way we want it, in such a way where we disregard them 100%. And that's what narcissists do. And when that happens to a child, you may become that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's hard to deal with the balance, right?
Mm-hmm. And as you see, the educational aspect is very important to me, because I see it everywhere now. The world has really become a bleak place for me, because now I look out here and I see everybody basically talking to themselves. It's like a psychological cage match everyone's happening with each other.
Yes, I'm laughing because I was an amusement park, mm-hmm. and there were these teenagers, or I wouldn't say teenagers, but they're teens, and they were talking at each other, if you know what I'm saying. Like, they were not. It was like they had their own audience. They were talking to their own audience, even though I'm talking to you guys, which is the audience. But you know what I'm saying? Like, they were talking at each other, and they were very, well, when I was in love, when you fall in love, and I'm like, are they talking to themselves? It wasn't selfish. It wasn't anything like that. It wasn't bad. Mm-hmm. It was just interesting to me to see that. It's like, okay, I see everybody talking about, they all believe they're being watched by somebody, or it's just funny. It's just, I don't know if it's a generational thing. Maybe I'm getting old. And I'm like, okay, was I doing that? Or, you get caught into that. You think you know everything.
And you know what? And let me speak to that fact. It's okay to be a child. It's okay to be a teenager. The point of becoming an adult is growing out of that. And when you're raised by a mom who is still a child or a teenager who doesn't deal with or recognize or regulate their emotions, you're going to be a child until something traumatic happens that wakes you up to realize that you're no longer a child. And that's where cognitive dissonance is born. And I think that social media in and of itself brings that out of all of us. If we're not careful, we are all susceptible to the danger of falling into the mirror image of narcissism.
Yeah.
The profile pic says it all.
Yeah, and I believe, like you're saying, education is very important, and you never stop learning. I never stopped learning.
Nope.
I always thought I had it down. Like, I know what narcissism is. I've been studying it for 4 years, and I had these books, and having the book is great, but when you don't apply it and you don't really really put yourself in it, it doesn't make a difference. So
it's true. Yeah, I think having the street smarts of experience can put the book in perspective. Absolutely. Yet, I think the book can also help the person in the situation who doesn't have the street smarts, it can teach them how to get out of it.
Yeah. I certainly don't have the street smarts.
Oh, you don't? You don't have the street
I
smarts?
don't. Even though I might appear that I do or act like I do, I don't.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
let me tell
very
you
naive.
something. Let me tell you something about my mom that actually, like, I anybody who knows me knows her and I have had this roller coaster topographical type relationship. You know, for what it's worth, I love her very much. I hope that she is somewhere right now taking care of herself. She's still alive. She's still walking this earth. I do want to say though, when I was a child, I remember playing a lot of video games and her friends, because she was a party girl. She loved to party. She loved to have a lot of people around. Her friends would come over, and because of my nerdy attitude that I had even more back then, okay, I'm a huge dork. You just bear with me here. I would literally play games with her friends. They're drunk and they're high and they're sitting with me and we're playing video games together. And I'm teaching them how to play Super Mario, okay, from the early 90s.
Okay.
Talk about the spankings, the whoopings, switches after that, because I took her friends from her. She was mad at me. How do you tell a child to stay in a child's place when all of your friends are coming into my bedroom?
Totally inappropriate.
Now, this is a story I haven't told the world yet. Exclusive for your show. Okay.
I'm honored. I'm honored that that you're doing this, because yeah,
Absolutely.
there's so many things that are inappropriate and so taboo to talk about. And I think when we say it out loud, it just changes everything, in my opinion. But
it does.
Yeah, thank you for trusting me and my audience to hear about this.
Absolutely. I think it's important. And like I said, this is a sequel to my intro. And in the intro, I'm trying to remember what I introduced. I think it's important to remember that upbringing that we went through. I think for me as an adult, I really did put a big shield up to protect myself away from the intergenerational trauma cycles, triggers, all that stuff. I didn't know I had any of that until last year. And here I am, like I'm this, I don't carry crystals or hug trees or anything, but I'm a huge fan of the new age culture. And so I've always been this self-help type person ever since 99, 2000, when I got on my monster truck, B-movie path in life. I took the off-road adventure. Once I started doing a lot of self-help, I was a know-it-all. I was a know-it-all late in my life, in my 20s, I think. And I was helping myself, and that was that. Now, some will call that narcissism. And to some degree, I think I was selfish. However, I was also a people pleaser. Why? Because I was so codependent on making people happy, being an entertainer. I chose entertainment as a career, always entertaining. And so I think I justified and rationalized in my head that I may be standoffish, but I'm also here to do whatever you want. That can be taken a lot of ways, and I mean all the ways.
Yeah.
So about 20 years of that, from about 2019, from 1999 till about 2019, when all of a sudden my life slowed down. When I came out here to the West Coast, my life really slowed down. I took a trip to Death Valley in 2018, did some thinking. 2019, I released a short. Well, first of all, I haven't told anybody I do music. I'm a musician on the side. I released a bunch of music, not for people, but for myself. No one's heard it yet. So technically I released it for me. But I also, for the first time, released a short movie about my experiences of how I woke up to myself for the third time after 20 years of I haven't slept in about 20, 25 years or so, but I finally got some good sleep in 2018, woke up, did my trips, 2019, made the project. And I thought I was good. Self-help, guy did great. 2020 happened, the world changed, everything went dark in myself for the first time. I thought I had already have gone through my dark night of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
But discovering Dr. Ramani, and I hold on, I used to study a lot of Deepak Chopra as well. So coupling Dr. Ramani with Deepak Chopra has brought me to a place where, hold on, I'm not done. And why did I think I was done in the first place? Was I done? I wasn't done. I just didn't know. I reached the extent of what I thought I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what helped me open up my eye on what narcissism is. I think it's truly the original pandemic that we're going back to now that the physical pandemic is starting to lift up a little bit.
Right. I think that actually is a great transition to the next part, guys. We're gonna take a break. We'll have a little bit more coffee, but it's been an amazing part one. So stay tuned, guys, for part two. We're back, guys. This is part two, and I didn't want to cut it off, so I probably have to upgrade my Zoom because, anyways, sometimes you get cut on the conversation, and it's like, oh, it's only a minute left. We're back, guys. We're back with Joshua and Narcissism, and yeah, we were talking about. Actually, one thing you were talking about was specifically what was happening in your childhood, right? But it reminded me of when because speaking of my mother, right? I actually was trying to always make her happy, right? And always try to basically give her a social interaction with people. So I was always trying to introduce my friends, so my friends can become her friends, and it always backfired. It's like, she don't like this one, she don't like this one. So I was always trying so hard, and that reminded me of what you were saying earlier about your mother's friends coming into your room and you becoming friends with them, and how is it? So it's a blurred line. Like, you don't know where her life begins or where her friendships are, and it should be separate.
Oh, and mentioning that, well, let me tell you, I was 9 years old and they were in their mid-20s to upper 30s. I'm thinking it was a school night. I mean, come on. I was a straight A kid, and I'm not trying to brag on my smarts, but I am a nerd. So being a straight A kid, I was pretty confident, and maybe she was confident in that as well for doing that. At the same time, I found myself rationalizing and justifying her adult actions with my childhood, making her the person that was okay in this situation. And I think that I think I'm talking about what you're talking about. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm going into a tangent, but I feel like there's a time and a place to do things like that in a way that is, I think, for a child should be more of a camp type situation and not a party situation where your drunk and high friends are hanging out with this minor under the age of 13.
Yeah, parties. I remember parties.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about the 70s parties. So that everything went, all the drugs, the alcohol, the kissing, inappropriate kissing. Not with me, but I was seeing that, how they were. Yeah. I have so many pictures in my head right now. Yeah. And then not to say anything bad about that, because it was it was the alcohol doing it, but I'm always trying to rationalize it too, and trying to say, well, they were drunk, or they were high, or they were in high spirits, but it becomes very uncomfortable. I remember being uncomfortable in the parties and having to retreat my room, So yeah, yeah.
I'm
So
with
many
you.
things.
I'm with you on that. And I think with my journey and what I've learned is that I think I mentioned at the very first episode, the first 18 years, it's our parents' responsibility to protect us. The 18 after that, it's up to us how we protect us. And if you're at a disadvantage in your early adulthood, like I was, that's because I was still trying to learn what it meant to be a man when I was already a man. And when I began to track that back to where that began, it began to me being perpetually treated as a child when I should have been growing. And also substances being used around a child, that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
If it puts the child in danger, if the adult becomes impaired around a child. And I don't think that that's something, and I used to justify that. I've justified that my whole life. I've rationalized that my whole life. And when I look back at that, there was a distorted truth of I was taught that I should not not only should I not participate in these activities, but I should also avoid people who participate in these activities in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yet it was happening every weekend or every night.
Right.
When I was young, every night. As I began to age, I began to see these things that happened all the time periodically. I was growing up and I was becoming a teenager. However, by that time, it's very interesting how, you were a kid, you're not supposed to remember that. But I do. And when I'm a teenager, it's not around as much, yet now I'm supposed to be this adult and I'm supposed to know right from wrong. It's like, don't you realize the first 10 years of my life, all of that crap was ingrained in me. So now I'm going to be ready to do all that crap you told me to stay away from, which I did, by the way.
Right.
I was a hardcore, on one hand, I was a hardcore drinker. And on the other hand, I was an ex-head. Here's some more full disclosure on exclusively for your show. I was very much into ecstasy at one point and very much into alcohol at another point, and sometimes on the same line at the same point. That's as far as I went, as far as my substance abuse issues. And all of that came to a head, I'd say, throughout the years, but definitely in 2015, it came to a head. And I just realized that there needs to be a change here. In 2016, that change, I went with that change and I started to get better slowly. So it's been about 5 years or so. Yeah, it's been about 5 years since I've really stopped ecstasy, and I drink occasionally. A bottle of wine can stretch over a week and not just 7 hours now.
Yeah.
Or 2.
Yeah,
and
like you said, we see that growing up, and we see how it's normalized, the drug use and the alcohol. And my mom would always say, sure, I'm an alcoholic, and then she's proud of it. She's not ashamed. She's not, and she always has that thing where I don't know what I was saying, or she would always forget. It's like, I never said that. Did I say that?
Denial.
Denial, right.
Amnesia, selective amnesia.
Yeah, I've been through that too. So yeah, and I learned to just
deflection.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another thing too with the addictions, right?
Absolutely.
I myself, I'm addicted to many things. I'm on many things. I'm addicted to sex, porn, and I'm addicted to, I wouldn't say addicted to alcohol, but obviously cigarettes, things that would harm me. And I didn't know how deep that went too, because I had what I call it the body count, which I started doing that, and I'm like, oh my Lord, what was I doing, and how was I affecting other people too, without care? And that sounds narcissistic too, because I didn't know how I was causing trauma. I was just basically trauma bonding, and just, it's an infection, right?
It's definitely a condition, I think, that we have placed upon us. Sometimes we know, sometimes we don't. And if we do know, we have a choice. And when we choose not to do better, then we have those people as well. And so, yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from with that. And, and also to add on to that, I think becoming an adult for me has taught me that what I need to do is I need to understand what my addictions are, what I'm capable of being addicted to, and what is my relationship to that. And do I really have a problem with that? Or do I have other problems and I'm using my substances addictions to placate over dealing with trauma? All the above.
Yeah.
All the above. There was a lot of trauma that I didn't know I had until literally last year. And now that I'm dealing with it, I don't need to drink to numb myself anymore. I don't need to, I stopped doing ecstasy several years ago, so I don't need to feel like high above the party. I don't need to feel like I need to love everybody more than they love themselves. I don't need to, and that's what ecstasy is. It's a love drug, and that's what you're doing. I don't need to alter my moods to be able to be a man. And at first, I think that's what I was doing without knowing it. To fit in society, I have to shut my mind off because of the trauma. When I wasn't dealing with the trauma, I had to start more trauma to feel like I was normal, going back to my original trauma. And that was what all the substances and the abuse of the substances were doing. Because honestly, I don't want to, if I ever have kids, I don't want to have kids and say, you can't drink, no alcohol in the house. No.
Yeah.
We had a liquor cabinet in the basement at my grandma's house. Oh, and by the way, I was raised by my grandma, and for obvious reasons, we had a liquor cabinet in the basement. I wasn't ever told not to drink, but I was also warned, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. I'm also seeing it every weekend. So of course I'm curious. But at this point in my life, if I ever have kids, I'm not going to hide away from them. I'm going to say, like, you can drink part of the meal, of age, of course. Okay, of age. I gotta say of age. However, if they're 16, 17, 18, and they want a glass of wine or half a glass of wine, have it with your food. There's a responsible way to drink.
Right.
And honestly, I want to say too, speaking of substance abuse, there's this website. I was going to say it until the end of the show and tell everybody, but it's called Dance Safe. Yeah, dancesafe.org. O-R-G. It started in the year 2000. I grew up in the rave culture. So I think a lot of the reason why I was okay when it came to doing ecstasy and drinking so much was because I did a lot of research. Hello, remember, I'm still a nerd. So I did a lot of research, extensive research on the type of things I was putting into my body. And then that's another thing that New Age culture really helped me with. It helped me homeopathically, alternatively get into these spiritual aspects of my body and really figure out what I was putting in and how it was affecting me. And it became this really mystical experience for me after a while. And so I think leaning over into that direction saves me from ODing, overdosing, basically. And I think that, because I don't want your viewers to think of me as condoning substance abuse or substances, but I also don't want them to think that I'm bashing anybody who has an actual problem. Because you can have a problem with sugar. Sugar is a drug, caffeine. I'm sitting here drinking about 24 ounces of coffee and this thing here before I even seen you today. So, I mean, come on.
Here's my cup too, so cheers.
Exactly. So I just want to be clear on, we're walking a very fine path here with our substances. And I know I walked a very fine path. I'm talking like hairline fracture type path, okay?
Right. Hey, yeah, and then, yeah, growing up with a person who is hypochondriac herself. She has like a CVS pharmacy right next to her bed. And she would just pick anything up. It's like, how do you feel? Oh, you feel some neck? And she would give me like some muscle relaxers and antidepressants. And I'm like, why am I taking this? What is this? Oh, it's just a pink pill, the blue pill, or, she wouldn't specifically go. Now I realize it was antidepressants, muscle relaxers, still stuff that you shouldn't be taking. And I'm like, do you ever realize what you were taking, or you just, she basically numbs herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned to do that too. I learned to numb myself to with drugs or with alcohol or with anything, any addiction, just to numb the pain. And then, yeah, like you said, it was until last year, to be honest with you, that I realized I wasn't going nowhere. I was just, I knew I had all the knowledge. I had all the, narcissism and all the other topics in my head. But it came to a point where I had to just own it and just act, say something, because I wasn't able to speak my truth. And yeah, and the healing begins when I had to realize what was my part of it. Well, what was I doing to?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Accountability, responsibility. Yes.
Right.
Consequence.
Yes. A lot of consequences. I had to leave where I was living at and be alone to realize, oh shit, why am I alone?
Yeah. Yeah. I woke up in 2015 in a dead end relationship. For 6 years, I had this partner. And then time after that, well, for 6 years, we were in the same vicinity. We had broken up within the first year, 2 years, actually, 3 years. 3 years. I'm trying to figure out my path here. 3 years. Half of that time, we were broken up. But a couple years before we broke up, I already knew there was a problem. Why did I choose to stay in it? Well, I wasn't ready to give up the payout that came with being in that relationship. See, I continued to use that relationship as a means to block who I knew inevitably I had to become in order to get out of that situation. Talk about accountability and responsibility and consequence. I was aware I was a man, I just chose not to do it, right? Well, I wasn't done weeping and woe ising me.
Yeah.
And realized that I'm still sitting here now in a blank state trying to figure out what was that moment of time. I will say this, there's so much to this story. I briefly managed a nightclub in this town called Peoria, Illinois in 2015. I finally got to a place where I had achieved every single dream I had set out 20 years before that, 15 years before that. I got there, I did it, and I was let down. I was let down massively. And I think that my child dream being let down like that, I think that woke me up in a sense to now what do I do? What's going on now? So I had to see a little bit more darkness before I actually was able to get back onto the path that I was on when I started making the dreams initially. See, that's the thing. For my path specifically, in the 90s, in the early half of the 90s, I had a good idea of what I was trying to do. When I started growing up, coming from the type of family I come from, a matriarchal, narcissistic, toxic, unhealthy, connected family, once I got to that place where it was time to grow up, I grew up. Gotta go. Let's go. Time to be a man. Blah, 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 blah. All this stuff. I left my inner child behind.
Yeah.
So when my inner child showed up at the club, asking me, "Are you ready to go yet?" It didn't work. I had realized that I not only let him down, but I also wasn't being the man that it took to do what I was trying to do for my child. So it's getting really metaphysical now, but I just want to
No,
get to.
I'm following. I'm
Are you
following
there?
you.
Are you good? Are you there?
I'm with you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, yeah, because I don't want to lose anybody. But inner child work, I would say, definitely got me thinking about what kind of man I was, because they both play back and forth. And I think it's called what, self-parenting. So I have to do, and this is all real time, by the way. I'm still very new at this. And I think if you actually are practicing being a better person to your adult self and your child self, if you're practicing that, that goes on for the rest of your life. There is no moment of arrival where, oh, I think I understand everything. No, 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 no. If you do, you're dead. And if you're walking and you're dead, then you're a zombie. So I'm not a zombie. I'm a living, breathing person trying to figure out what it means to be a man and respect my inner child that allowed me to grow up.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I have a lot to say about inner child. And actually it came to a point where if I'm going on a tangent too, let me know, but it came to a point where like I was viewing my life and I was always like victimhood. I was in the victimhood mentality, right? I was always hurt and anything anybody would say would hurt me, and I would be like victim, right? But it came to a point where I'm like, I'm 40 freaking 8 at the time. Now I'm 49. And I'm like, when are you gonna grow up and just realize that you're no longer that child, you're no longer the victim, you're no longer in that situation, and just man up and just be the adult and see the things that happened to me when I was a kid or a teenager and stuff. It was not my fault. Anything you were doing at the time was not your fault. And embracing that child who was being hurt and he's being let down and he's being, they shut him up. So I had to basically go back as an adult to those moments, which is a very shadow work or whatever they call it. Very difficult, very, very difficult and very painful, but not in the sense that it's not physically painful, but it was so good. I let so much out, and crying will happen, snorting and crying and wailing, shaking in the bed, stuff like that. It's like I've never been through that, and it was good. It was just good because it's a lot to do. I'm still learning. I'm still doing it. I'm still, learning. I'm still making mistakes, obviously. And so, but I'm forgiving myself and say, it's okay. You didn't know this and you didn't know that. And I'm still not, completely 100%. Like you said, we're never stop growing. So when you stop growing, that's when you're dying.
You're dead.
When you're dead.
You're dead.
Right.
And that's okay. We're taught that we have to have it perfect right now. It's got to be perfect. No, you want it your way, and you think you're perfect. You think you're perfect, and you want me to do it your way. I'm not perfect. I'm imperfect. And that's something that I had a smart ass mouth growing up. So I was always like, da, 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 da. At the same time, at some point, I stopped talking about it. And it became this internal voice after a while of hearing somebody else say these things. And I think that is the root for me anyway. That was the root for my cognitive dissonance, is that I would hear them and I would hear myself, and then I'd be doing something else entirely different. So it's like 3 things going on here. So to speak to what you were saying, absolutely. I think it's a practice, if anything. For me, I'm a type A personality. I'm a Libra. I'm an INTJ. Like I said in the very first episode, my introduction episode, I'm a very routine-oriented person, textbook, like computer, okay? If I'm not like that, I will become chaotic. And I have a moon in Aries and a moon rising, okay? So by nature, I am chaotic. And I know that there's a time and place for that. I know my inner child likes to play. when they like to play, and that's that. So I have to bargain with myself. Let's get some work done, and then we can watch a movie. Let's get some work done,
Mhm.
and then we can go run around outside. Let's get some work done. We can ride our bike. Let's get some work done. We can punch our punching bag, you know?
Mhm.
So, because that's what my kid likes to do. And I think to myself, wow, when I actually have a kid, I hope I'm ready. Because it's never a time with a child, it seems. And I think that's what self-parenting has taught me. It has taught me to treat myself as a child as I wish I were treated when I was a child. What I needed. I know what I was needed. Now that I'm an adult, I know what I needed when I was a child. So in forgiving myself, and I hope you've forgiven yourself too, in forgiving myself, I'm able to look back at my mom and her family, and even my dad's family. I can look at all these people and say, wow, I wonder if they've dealt with what they've dealt with. Something tells me no,
Mm.
but that's none of my business. They had a responsibility when I was a child.
Right.
They did what they did. I'm glad to be able to go back and take care of the child that they abandoned. Period.
Yeah, the thing about family or relatives is that I actually see the same pattern in my family, both sides, mother's side and father's side. I see the same pattern with other cousins and even my father too. Or, I see this insidious narcissism seeping in through every relationship. And like you said, they pretend they're all great. Everything on the surface is great. We all hug each other, we kiss in the cheek, and everything's cool and kumbaya here and there. But at the end of the day, we never talk about our feelings. We never shared anything like this. And the minute you do, oh no, don't talk about that stuff. That's we don't do that in our family, and we don't do that especially on the holidays. I
Mhm.
ruined a few holidays. I've been called I call myself the Grinch before, because I ruined Christmas, I ruined Thanksgiving, I ruined everything, because I'm like, something's going on here. Time out. I'm out.
Yeah, same. We share that quality. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't like it when I'm very quiet, or I can be very passive, or I can be very, not outspoken. But when I do speak, mm-mm. I don't know what type I am. I have to take that test. I'll take it
Take that
after.
test.
But
Take that test. It'll give you some perspective of what people deal with you and what you deal with of yourself. What is your zodiac?
Libra,
I forgot. Right, because your birthday is the 4th or 5th, right?
the second.
Okay. I was just completely okay.
And
Good to know. You're right in the middle of the spectrum. Okay. Yeah,
right.
we tend to we're a pair of scales, so we're not gonna stay superficial or exploitative for too very long. And I think those type of relationships are superficial and filled with exploitation when it's based on surface attributes. When the unique quality of life and me and other things encounters a narcissist, they don't want to deal with that because it has to be superficial. It has to be what they want. And they have to be able to exploit you in some way.
Oh yeah.
You know,
And the holidays are coming up, guys. It's like that's
yeah,
like,
it's
oh my
coming.
god, it's a whirlwind of emotions happening, because like I haven't cut him off completely, but I'm not gonna I'm not doing it this year. I have my family, which I adopted my family, so uh, I
That's what
feel
it's
like
about.
I can be myself, and we can talk about anything we want to do, and not being judged, and not being spoken about. Like, we don't do this in our family, because I'm no longer a kid. I'm no longer, you can be treating me like a 14-year-old, or but that's what they do. Narcissist parents. I'm going to say just parents in general. They do that. They put you back in that child mode.
Toxic parents. They put you back into this is our family. This is the unit. This is the cycle. This is the cycle. You're breaking the cycle. Yes, the fuck I am. Excuse me for the F. Can I say the F word here?
You can say whatever.
Okay. Yes, the fuck I am.
I'm cool with yeah. When it's necessary to say fuck, you say fuck.
Will do, can do.
This is not
Absolutely.
TikTok. No censorship here,
Thank
guys.
you.
And
Thank
if
you.
you're being triggered, guys, sorry. I like to
Oh,
curse too.
yes. Yes, this is yes. I don't think we're trying to trigger for the sake of being triggered. I think we're all triggered enough.
Right. No, and I'm triggered anytime I see something on either TV or social media or in the news or anything like that. I get triggered every day, even when with my because I'm a Lyft driver, and every day every interaction to me is some it can be triggering. Like yesterday, I was actually driving with this guy in the back seat of my car. We were having a great conversation, and all of a sudden he got on the phone with his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, and I heard a whole breakup
Oh,
in 20 minutes.
oh.
And it was really triggering to me. And I'm like, okay, I think this is your stop, sir. You gotta go.
Wow.
But it was good to be centered and all, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I 20 minutes, huh?
It was a 20-minute, well, from the time that he started talking to his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, until
Gotcha.
the
Okay.
yeah.
Here I am. And that's why I said my my practice and what I do is so bleak now, because I think now I go back into my history and I think I've never actually have had a relationship. I've had nothing but a series of trauma bonds, a bunch of connections to a bunch of toxic ridiculousness because I was toxic. I was
Hey,
toxic. I was raised to be toxic. So when I started to grow, literally like you last year or some time before that, I was toxic. So how many relationships that well, I didn't have any relationships. I had a bunch of trauma bonds.
right.
So how
So
many
did I. Me too. So
bonds did I build
I
and
do have
break?
to admit too. I was, yeah.
Yeah,
I was the one that was causing all the trouble, and
that's where it starts. That's where self-accountability, responsibility, consequence comes from. Am I the toxic one? Yes. It
sometimes you
has
are.
to, it has to start somewhere. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I think to myself, I'm not 100% of the problem. I'm either 80 or 20% of the problem. Now, which is it?
Mm. Oh,
And
I
that,
was always blaming the other person. It was his fault.
you know, they say it takes two to tango. I think Dr. R talked about in one of her proverbs in her series that it takes two to tango, but I don't know about that. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. I was tangoing, and there was a lot of relationships I could have had. Instead, I was trauma bonding because
Yeah.
of the trauma I didn't know I had. And I think I hurt a lot of people. However, I'm glad that I know that, and I hope that they found people who can
Yeah.
validate who they are.
Right.
If you're not
And actually,
practicing.
there's I
Mhm.
don't know if you heard of. Well, you probably have because you're such a nerd. Probably heard of Brené Brown and her series about shame.
Yes.
Okay. And the difference between we only have 4 minutes, so I'm sorry. We can talk
Oh, go
about it
ahead.
next, but maybe we should break it up now. Sorry, guys. Let's continue this, but
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
part three. We'll see where that goes, but give me 1 second. Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. This is again Italo and Joshua, and here we are with the conclusion of now. I was going to say Machiavellianism, but that's why it's because I was practicing the word before I even said it. But yeah, next week, guys, if you're listening still, next week's topic will be Machiavellianism. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
Which I'm gonna have to research about that because
Ooh.
I heard a term, but that's about it.
It's even less understood than psychopathy is.
Yeah, I always picture like a villain.
Pretty much. It kind of like that scene. It kind of like that scene in The Matrix Reloaded where Neo's fighting all the Smiths.
Okay.
That's a clue on what Machiavellianism is.
Let's leave it at that. That's a good picture. I love The Matrix, so I'm all about that. Movies is my. I'm a movie buff as well. So anyhow, and I'm excited about the new Matrix too. So we can talk about that too. But and actually, we left off at a very interesting part, which is the relationships or quasi relationships that are not really quite. But yeah, that's interesting because it's kind of like we always look for the same characteristics as our parents, you know, in them. And I think we get attracted to that. At least I did get attracted to that for some reason, and that was an interesting part where there's all kinds of stories I can go about, but specifically about shame, it was interesting because I learned about carried shame and versus your own shame. And we were talking about shaming because sometimes I used to carry people's shame as my own and act as if I could fix that somehow. And of course you can, because it's not yours.
Yeah. Oh, you saying that takes me back to the time where I thought I have to help everybody. I have to help. And the two ways I was going to help was to fix it and heal it. I'm going to fix it and I'm going to heal it.
Right.
It's the selfish part of the new age cultures where you think you can go around and heal everything and fix everything for somebody else. I mean, come on. If you haven't done it for yourself, how can you do it for anybody else? First of all, let's get realistic here.
Right.
So,
exactly.
you know, that's when the exploitation starts to happen. You know, for me especially, it's like, now I need to know everything about you and nothing about you so I can do what you want me to do for you. It's like, train me to be your personal enabler or something like that. It's ridiculous. And I think that's where a lot of my issues came from. Was I was trauma bonded, one, and two, I was enabled to do all the trauma bonded experience I wanted because I thought that that's all I deserved because of how I grew up, looking for that in other people.
Okay.
So it became essentially my fault that I brought these people into my life. Now, before your listener starts saying, "Oh, he's victim blaming," no, I'm not blaming victims. I'm not blaming myself. I'm blaming no one, actually. However, remember, Italo, responsibility goes back to the parent for the first 18 years. I'm responsible for the next 18 years. So I got to go back and tell myself, forgive myself, and understand that I had no idea. And now that I know I had no idea, I have to do better by reconciling myself. Should I, or do I go back to those trauma bonds? It depends. They could be on a whole different journey, a whole different path. Like this one person I tried to reconcile with recently, he said to me, "Oh, I accept cash and checks," because he thinks that I stole money from him and for him, and he thinks I owe him money because of an opportunity I got when he was in my life that he attributes to signing off to, because he was there, he was entitled to take the credit of what I did that I've been working for my whole life.
Okay.
So do I think he'll see this video? No. However, I want him to see it because I want him to know that I thank him for his part. However, he was a trauma bond and we both were in an unhealed place trying to heal each other. And that was healing going on in that situation. So I learned real quick that that's not where I should be because we're in different places and that's that. So I want an actual relationship. And like I said, trauma bonds and relationships are two different things.
Right. And there's the thing about the relationship that you have with yourself or with
Yeah.
ourselves. I've
Yeah.
learned that I need to be single
Yeah.
for a minute because I haven't been single. It's always like one relationship heals the other and heals the other and heals the other. And
Yeah.
meanwhile,
I can't call them relationships anymore. Connections is the closest I can call it. The way I see it now, trauma bonds.
right.
All of them were dark for me. They were all dark. They all taught me something because I was in them, helping spin the darkness. Mm-hmm. Now I sit back in awe at the fact that I've never been in a relationship. And I haven't been in a trauma bond in 5 years, I think.
Right.
So
what is it going to take for you to date again?
For me to date again, I think that I'm a lot more open at empathy, reciprocity, and reciprocity and compassion. I think that I'm willing to forgive myself a lot more often whenever it comes to, I didn't know that. So let's learn it together. Let's work on it together. I had no idea. And also, whenever I know I can be short, and I know I can be very direct. And I also know I could be probably dismissive and cold sometimes because I hang out up here a lot. And I have to remember to clock out up here for the day, come back to my body, and hang out with my people. And that includes my partner, that includes my kids, that includes my friends, you, everybody, the world. I have to remember that just because I'm like, whatever, it could really mean something to somebody. And I think that moving forward for my relationships, I want somebody to be able to share with me stuff. And I want to be able to learn and be there and be present and learn and try to understand their human experience for what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially since once you heal your own wounds, I guess you can have the antennas up, have the notion of what does it feel like? Does it feel like I'm manipulated and I'm being pulled this way or that way? Mm-hmm. Does that feel okay? I never had that before. I never had the checking with myself moment for over 20 years. And then my last relationship was really good in that sense, is that he's the one that said, look, we got to sit and talk. And we sat and talked for hours. And sometimes I wanted to go to sleep because I couldn't take it anymore. I just wanted let's just not talk about it. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't handle it. But he really helped me to
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm glad that you have the space to even recognize something like that, because that's a lot of work.
But those people don't come easily, nowadays, especially with the social media and everybody. Yeah, all the trauma bonded people out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, narcissism now has a playground, a mask called social media.
Yeah, big time.
I mean, look at what Facebook is doing. Like I've seen you talk about the last couple of weeks with Meta. Like now, I think Facebook is doing now what they always had intended to do 20 years ago. They're just being more upfront about it now.
That's the true nature of Machiavellianism. Even though I don't know it by heart, but I'm like, I could see feeling going like, yes, enter my universe.
Yeah,
and I can dictate the rules, and I can be the god. And
I think Facebook has destroyed the dynamic of the family. Yeah, destroyed meaning done, already destroyed, not destroying, destroyed.
And it's an addiction too. I've been addicted. I admit it. I'm addicted to social media and getting likes and getting the traction. In a way, I need it. I need it because of the podcast. I wanted to go places.
A little validation's healthy, right?
A little validation helps. Yes.
A little bit, as long as you still have empathy, compassion, and reciprocity for a face-to-face conversation like we're having now.
Right. Yeah, not
So-
having to focus on the comments. It's like, oh, comment came up, and the ADD comes up. It's like, what were you saying?
Oh my
okay,
God. And people like, do you have ADHD?
I don't know. I don't know if I
Okay.
do.
Okay. I haven't been diagnosed. I haven't went to the doctor for it, but I do have tendencies. Also have tendencies of OCPD, not OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. I think I might have obsessive compulsive personality disorder because I cannot do a lot of things without crossing T's, dotting I's.
Okay.
So
yeah, we gotta we gotta see one day and just compare our symptoms.
Let's compare disorders.
Right. No, but I think everybody, to a point, we all became ADHD because social media. That's
Yes.
just it. If you don't grab somebody's attention in less than 10 seconds or 5 seconds.
Yes. You brought me back to the point I was trying to make with you. Exactly. Especially our current newest ADD mapper, which I think is TikTok. I think.
Yes.
I think TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, because what TikTok, you have to like narrow that down to like even 10 seconds is better. The less the better.
Yeah.
And you can't really talk about all the stuff that we're going to talk about in 10 seconds. You can't get to know anybody in 10 seconds either. So
and if you do, that drifts back into narcissistic categories of I don't need to know you unless there's a benefit. That's what a narcissist does. They get to know you for benefit. And if they can find that benefit in 5 seconds, they got you.
That's a skill.
Yeah, it's an anti-people skill.
Yeah.
I guess. I just literally made that up on the spot.
Sounds legit.
Yeah. We got to protect ourselves. We got to protect ourselves from that type of interaction, I think.
Yeah. So what do we do now? What is the aftermath of somebody who's been suffering or surviving narcissistic abuse?
The aftermath, I think I sort of gave like a 5-point checklist for psychopathy. I think I can say when it comes to narcissism, protect yourself. Protect yourself by knowing your boundaries. Keep a good idea of where you start and where they stop, or where you stop and where they start. Keep an idea of your boundaries. And I have my boundaries. So they can be highly unique, or you just got to figure out what you want and what you don't want. And I think that's the hardest thing that we as a people or as an individual can go through. If you never have had an individual life, or if you've never experienced independence, you may not know what you want. So if you don't know what you want, remember what you loved as a child. You will remember that.
So yeah, I think we can borrow the similarities between what we talked about already on psychopathy.
Mm-hmm.
For those that haven't heard it, go back to psychopathy. We talked extensively as to how to protect yourself and how to set boundaries and everything. But yeah, that's basically, so I guess it's the same rules for
sort of
psychopaths and sociopaths, right?
Sort of. I do want to add a couple more things, because when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with somebody who does recognize shame and guilt. They just don't want you to know it. So it becomes this tug of war psychologically of how do you maintain yourself while you're watching somebody melt down who doesn't want to admit it. Like, you're dealing with a dysregulated person. And for me, the Gray Rock method that I'm pretty sure you've heard of from Dr. R, she talks a lot about that. The Gray Rock method, in a long story short, you're basically not responding to the bullshit from a narcissist. And sometimes they'll get mad because you're their supply and you're like their drug, so to speak. If you don't give them their drug, if you don't give them you, they will rage because they're literally lacking from what you typically give them.
Right.
Gray rock method. And number 3, the deep method, which I'm sure you've also have heard from Dr. Ramani. She talks about the deep method is no defending, no engaging, no explaining, and do not personalize. If you can do all of that,
Right.
you're good. And I think that right there adds on to the aftermath of how to deal with a narcissist, and also seek treatment, seek therapy. Google a hotline number, dial 411, call 911 if you really need help.
Right.
Simply look for the local medical authorities and get yourself some therapy, get yourself some help, figure out who else out there is going through what you're going through, like you're watching with us here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you cannot trust who's around you, and we have different experiences as far as we're not in the near danger zone. But yeah, those who are listening, who are in there inside that house, especially with being quarantined with that person and being gaslighted and being made crazy, you will probably think that you're crazy. I actually ended up thinking I have bipolar disorder. And or multiple personality disorder or any of the disorders.
Yes.
I always put it on me, and it can be crazy making.
It can be, and that's why I tell people all the time, if you forget everything I said, remember this: study, research, learn, repeat, rinse and repeat, study, research, learn everything about this stuff. Learn so you will see it, the red flags, before. I always say, before you walk into somebody's house, check out the drapery. If it's red, get the fuck out.
Right.
If you see red flags, get the fuck out. If you want to explore and figure out if there could be a possibility, stay there. Check it out. Just beware of love bombs and all that stuff, and give it some time. Get to know somebody, and do not rush into a connection without properly vetting the situation. Because remember, you have 2 choices: another trauma bond or an actual relationship. Which one do you want? That depends on the speed, okay? The physics, the trajectory of how you're going to move into this connection. Yeah. I tell myself this every day, by the way.
I used to rush into, I even proposed marriage to a couple of people in the first month of meeting them.
Whoa.
Yeah. Luckily, they said no. So I was spared, but yeah.
The feelings, huh? There was a lot of feeling.
And actually, it turns out it was after we were arguing, or the reconciliation part.
Love bomb.
That's when I felt the need to say, I want to marry you, or I want us to have a future together, or move in together. I was actually asking one of them to move in to our garage. At the time, I was living with my mom, and he said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I will not be moving with your mom next to us. And no, that's one of the things that happens in the show. I Love a Mama's Boy. I don't know if you had a chance to see it.
Mention it to me. I'm dying to see that.
And there's one case where he just got married, or he's getting married, and he decides to turn the garage into their home, and of course the mother can come and go as she pleases. And I'm like, I was cringing, because I was like, that means that I would have been that case. Like, if they were following me around with this, the cameras, that would have been me. That, oh my God. and I cringed, because it's like, oh my God, how was I not seeing that? And it was coming from me. It wasn't coming from my mom, or it wasn't, nobody told me to say that. Yeah.
Isn't that something? Once again, I could see myself in that. I contributed to just straight up codependence. We have to fight for our independence, just like we did in 1776. And 1865. We have to remember our independence as a person and how it's our birthright to be an individual.
Right.
And I think that if we don't exercise that, we fall back into trauma bonded traumas, triggers, cycles, even cycles, really.
Right.
And a lot of those cycles are not conscious, they're subconscious.
What did they say? If you repeat this, the same mistake over and over is insanity.
That's right. And you know what? It feels really insane getting sane again.
Right.
For the first time, even. Some of us have never been sane.
Yeah.
I'm one of them. I've never been sane. I have to get sane. And getting sane, I felt insane. And people gaslit me into thinking I was going crazy for wanting to do better for myself.
Yeah. Don't you get those people that are always undermining what you're doing, your art, or especially if you're an artist.
Oh God, that right there. There's a thing called covert / vulnerable narcissist, where I think Dr. R gives an example of, well, if the world, the kids could do what they can do today because they have the internet. If I had the internet when I was younger, I could be doing a lot better for myself. Are you kidding me?
Mm-mm.
If anything, you have a wonderful advantage to do something different than this generation has ever seen before. Like in 20 years, we're going to have kids born from the internet, literally, in the Matrix.
In the Matrix.
In the Matrix. We were born before the Matrix got popular, before it got popular. So
before cell phones.
Before cell phones, even before they were popular too.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting the way society is now catching up with all this stuff, and how we have to, I say we because I think you understand me. I think we have to just really keep in mind that we are our own people. We're our own person within the collective of different persons.
Oh yeah. I got different personalities. I got Charlie over here. He's very talkative. Then I have Bob, who's very quiet. Bob is like,
does he talk?
He don't talk much.
Okay.
Yeah, I have so many alter egos that
I like Bob.
You do? I hated Bob.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing about narcissism. When I, to go back to what you said, like, who am I going to date? I want to date the nerd in the corner. I want to date the nerd who is here because he wants to enjoy the environment. Just he's a friend said come along, and there's a support system going on. Just somebody who doesn't have to be the life of the party. And I used to DJ, and I used to be the life of the party, but none of that. What does that matter at the end of the night?
Right.
You know, so somebody who isn't an overflowed cup of charisma, confidence, or charm.
But that's a red flag. That's a red flag right there.
Those are three grandiose red flags right there. Okay, landmines.
That's Charlie 100%. That's him.
Okay.
Yeah. So I like Charlie. He's very charming.
Oh,
he can talk his way out of anything.
Okay.
And when he does, he doesn't want it no more.
Oh.
Like, never mind. I was kidding.
He gets bored.
I don't want a relationship. I don't want to. No. I just want to have sex.
That's that.
Yeah. Yeah. He got me in a lot of trouble. And now Italo is another one. Italo is another, alter ego. But I like Italo because he can listen too.
So Italo has a attention span.
Yes.
Okay.
He does not have ADHD. Sometimes he does, but
Within good taste, with an empathetic attention span.
yes.
Okay. Because that's who I know. I met Italo, I think.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you understand that. We're talking about multiple personality disorder right now, by the way.
Yeah, I
But,
know. We went into another realm of
well, it's part of it though. It's these narcissistic people. They are superficial. They are superficial, and they use exploitation as a weapon to get what they want from someone. And they sometimes have different masks, sort of like Scooby-Doo, like the monster at the end of the week type situation.
mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. So
Yeah. I know Scooby-Doo.
It's interesting. Yeah, Scooby-Doo. This is all about Scooby-Doo.
If you can nothing about what we just said, you'll remember Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, from the 60s. Yeah, go back to the 60s and chill out and watch some Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, I may have to TikTok this moment, like put a little bit of
please do. Yeah.
Scooby-Doo, and so they will have no clue what we're talking about.
And I would say have an edible, but some of us don't want the THC. So have a CBD, have a CBD treat. I recommend the tea. Have a hemp tea, and then watch some Scooby-Doo, and you'll be fine. I promise.
Okay.
I promise. And this is not FDA regulated. Okay. So be sure to read up and study.
And have some munchies.
Have some food. Yes, have lots of food.
Yes. We don't encourage drugs, guys. I'm sorry.
We're not encouraging.
We're not doing that.
Use the 7 deadly sin of gluttony, okay, with caution. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't condone sin. I don't condone sin, but hold on. I don't condone sin, and I won't judge it. Just keep in mind that you're in control of that. So
that's right.
Sin is also not FDA approved. I just want to put that out there too. So yeah.
I'm gonna do a lot of research after this show. I'll be like, what is he talking about? I haven't done any. Well, I'm not gonna say that. I've done some drugs, but mostly weed.
Drugs are scary.
Cocaine. Cocaine will, yeah. It's like having coke, I guess.
Pop?
I was up all night.
Oh.
But I was fully conscious of what I was doing.
That's a very interesting. It sounds like coffee to me. It's
pretty much
cocaine.
Yeah.
Like a cocoa bean plant, right? I think there's a similarity there.
Yeah. And actually in Peru, where my family's from,
yeah,
you actually get coca leaves. You have to chew coca leaves to climb Machu Picchu, and that gets your system ready to face the altitude and everything. So it's a natural drug.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's like tea, drinking tea, and you have a little coca leaves in there. It's natural.
It's not what westernized society has done to it.
No, not at all.
That sounds very interesting. The legend has it that my mom's dad had a cocaine plant in the house, and that's about all I know. Like, I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if it's true. Yeah. I have no idea. But that's interesting. Yeah. My first foray into Peruvian culture, I think, was the Celestine prophecy.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
it took place in Peru. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm very curious and interested in Peruvian.
Well, you have the ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is very popular in Peru, and that gives you a trip of your life, but you have to have a guidance, and you throw up, and then you.
All great, good.
Great. It's great, guys. You throw up.
Yes.
All the toxicity out of your system, I guess.
I would love a nice purge. Just a good
purge. We do need a purge.
Yes, the next therapist I want to throw up the whole time. And get it all out,
Hey, you'll feel
clean,
better.
clean you out.
Sometimes you do need a cleansing.
Clean you out. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, we spoke about The Exorcist the last episode, so something very similar to that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta get exercised.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, we are coming close to the end, guys. I do want to thank Joshua once again. You were great as always, giving us your knowledge and your nerdism and your, all this stuff. I know that you don't take it the bad way because you keep saying it. So
I'm a Jedi for nerds.
yeah, and I'm a Chihuahua today.
Yeah.
So we're in the same
Yeah.
universe here.
Yes, we are.
But stay tuned, guys. We're gonna go into another section of Machiavellianism. I hope I'm saying it right.
Yeah, that's the third and final of the Dark Triad, Machiavellianism.
Machiavellianism.
Yeah, it's a $500 word or something like
right?
that. Yeah.
I'm sure if you get that in the Scrabble, you'll have like a lot of points.
Yes. Well, one last thing I want to say, speaking of Scrabble and games, to add to narcissism, there's this mentality, the slot machine mentality that I think is also part of the social media culture. It's also called swipe mentality. You're swiping all day and all night. People, remember, when you're swiping, it's like playing a slot machine. You're always looking for the next treasure. So just be careful and swipe and stop, okay? And drink some water or something and then come back and do it. But just try not to get lost in the game of social media.
I have gotten lost.
Yeah, it's a thing.
It was fun, but it's like, okay, that's just, I'm not supposed to be seeing this stuff. I don't know why I'm doing this in this guy's bathroom.
Oh.
It was interesting though.
Yeah, in the bathroom, yeah. Which is funny. The bathroom is where you purge and clean at the same time. So that's an interesting place to.
He was purging.
Swiping?
He was purging in some sense.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah. On TikTok, guys. All right. So we're gonna talk about it some other time because that's a long conversation there.
I think
yeah. Just picture that in your mind. Somebody purging in their bathroom.
Oh, maybe we'll add that to the sadistic episode, the sadism episode.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure that gets into that category.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Thank you once again. And thanks for commenting. I'm going to put my email there at the bottom of this video. And if you're listening to this too on TikTok, well, whatever.
TikTok.
You'll see it. You'll see me. You'll see all the way to comment, contact, and yeah, just share, like, subscribe. That's what they say.
That's what they say.
All right, Joshua. Thanks for coming.
We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Hit the record button.